Okay, right. So, welcome to episode 1 of L.Art podcast. The L standing for love, local, anything that you can think of to do with art that begins with L. So, for short, L'Art. So it's L.Art podcast, and it's me, Jason Hatt, talking to Alex Small about his art today. We're linking this in with an exhibition at the Hattbox salon in Northampton, which will be the sort of premiere exhibition that we have, first one that we're ever going to have. And Alex has kindly agreed to be a part of that. So we're going to talk to Alex a little bit about his work, his life, his history and art, and what inspires him and what got him into doing art in the first place. And so we'll see how we get on. Okay, so welcome Alex Small.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, good.
Okay, right, well that's a good start.
We're in the happy place of the studio.
Yeah, so I was going to mention that to start with. So the idea really with this podcast is any artists that agree to show at Hattbox, we'll do the podcast with them. And also what I wanted to do was kind of like interview whoever's on the podcast at a place where they do their work or that they found inspiring. So we are at Intercession, which is in the Albion Brewery building.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, next to it.
Yeah, next to it. Which is a really, really great art space. And Alex has shown me around. And do you want to talk a little bit about Intercession?
Yeah, well, Intercession is run by Pauline Wood. We did quite a few exhibitions previously, about 2 years worth. Programme of various artists coming from London, other places in the UK, into town, so a bit of variety for the town. We've had ceramicists, printmakers. It's mostly, the focus is mostly printmaking, but that's kind of expanded printmaking, so you know it goes to video, to drawing, to ceramics as well.
Cool.
Since the pandemic, I've not been up so much, but
I should probably mention that we are doing this recording during coronavirus. So we're sitting in a room, we're sort of socially distanced, aren't we, Alex?
yeah, quite.
Yeah. We've got windows open. So I was just going to mention we have got a window open, so we might get some interference noise, but never mind. And I've had a look around. It's a really cool place. And what would you say about the printing machine that you've got here, that really old thing out there?
The Star Wheel Press. It's an amazing bit of kit. I think it's 200 years old. So
that's pretty old.
Yeah, it's got a good innings, and it's an absolute pleasure to work on. It's got a really big. It's called a star wheel.
Yeah.
That you use to pull the prints through. So it's quite a satisfying tool.
Yeah.
You have to
imagine,
quite a physical process. Really, really lucky to be able to use it.
Yeah.
Really.
So some of the prints that you've shown me this morning that are going to be in the exhibition, well, all the prints have gone through that, haven't they? Am I right?
That's right. Yeah. They're all monotypes.
Yeah.
So
what's interesting to me is, like you say, it's 200 years old.
Yeah.
But yet the work that you're putting through it, when it comes out the other end, it's like it's really now, and it feels, and it's really current, and it's got a real sort of edge to it. So in a weird way, the fact that this is such an old piece of kit has really created something that's really fresh.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the beauty of the medium that is printmaking. Is there's quite a long tradition to it. It's historical in certain ways, but it is very much contemporary endeavour. The graphical qualities of print and the kind of, well, the way that I use it as well, with found imagery and reproducing imagery, you know, it's a really useful medium. That's the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
I guess it's like painting in a way. It's like the best way.
Well, I mean, like, I'll fess up right now. I mean, I'm interviewing you, but I don't really know anything about art. I dabble. I do a little bit myself, but like I sort of explained to you before, I don't really know any art history. But I do love art, and so we were just talking about your prints and how amazing I think they are. They're incredible, and I hope when people see them that they have the same response. I'm sure they will. So do you want to sort of like, now we sort of talked about intercession and the reason we're here, and you do some of your work here and the printing machine, which is incredible. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit about who you are and the sort of things that you like to do?
Yeah, well, I'm Alex Small, full-time artist at the moment, based in Northampton, from Northampton. I've been away to study in Bristol and London, and I do a lot of art really. It's been my main thing since as long as I can remember. So whether I'm working other jobs or doing this full time, it's always been my sort of primary focus. Which is,
you were born with a paintbrush in your hand, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you could say that, yeah. Yeah, a pencil or a biro. Or, yeah, it's like, yeah, just like literally I've always done it, and then luckily enough been encouraged to carry on with it as well.
So with your, I suppose with your history, you know, when you were a child and things, were you sort of really encouraged through to do art then, or was there something there at that time, do you think?
Yeah, I think I probably come from like creative parents, not necessarily artists themselves, but you know, as many people have lots of creative elements in their lives, don't they?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like lucky in that way to be encouraged to do it, really, because I mean, sometimes there's you can have a lot of problems if you're discouraged from creativity. I think. Yeah. But so yeah, it's always been a kind of a point of reference for me all through life, all through various events, and it's, I suppose in one way it's kind of a consistent thing, especially like having a studio. It's the one thing that's been consistent. Yeah.
Do you think that's important, to be able to sort of separate certain, like your life at home, to be able to come out and have a studio to go to?
Yeah, really important. I mean, current circumstances, people working from home more, and like obviously do a bit of work from home.
Has that affected you?
Yeah, because I will spend all day, every day in the studio I can, doing stuff, whether that's making art or looking out the window or whatever, researching, or just being in the space and being with the art. It's, you know, it's something I love doing. So to have a kind of a change in pace, I guess, to not being able to do that, it's quite a change, really. It's quite a difference. Lucky because I can come to intercession and use that.
Do you think, because I was saying earlier about like how great this current sort of bit of work that you're producing really, really is, do you reckon that you've produced this because coronavirus has happened and you were sort of like limited to what you could do, or do you think this is what would have happened? Before we sort of entered the pandemic, were you heading in this direction?
I think in terms of like the themes in the work and the kind of what I do to work perhaps is the same, but the big difference was how I was working. So kind of more structured because of the parameters around that. So, you know, for example, we're booking the space, so we use it on our own within the guidelines sort of thing. That kind of structures my time. In terms of like, right, I've got today to do some art, whether you feel like it or not, it's kind of different to how I would work before, where
Yeah.
I'll go to the studio, spend all day in there, maybe not do so much,
Yeah.
maybe do a lot, maybe stay there all night.
So this is interesting because this is like you're renting the space to do art. So you've got to say to yourself, well, like if you went to your space where you would normally go, you'd go in. If you felt like it, you would do some. If you didn't, okay, that's fine. But really right now, you're kind of like saying, okay, I've got a certain time that I'm going to do some art.
Yeah. That is there normally because obviously you're trying to make some kind of a living. To have your mind really focused. I mean, it's not just in art, but focusing of the mind through pandemic things is like, really it really kind of helps to get on with stuff. Because I mean, people have lost their lives over the past year, and I mean, if there's a time to try things in the studio, it's probably like, you want to be getting on with it.
Yeah, that's interesting because I suppose I was imagining the opposite in a way, that you've got a certain time where you've got to do something, you book it, and you're kind of like, because I suppose like I'm thinking art's spontaneous, but I suppose it doesn't have to be like that. I suppose you can be. Yeah,
I think there is spontaneity to it. That it's what it is kind of like managing that. So, like being ideally when you're feeling spontaneity, you'll be in the studio to do that. So when that happens, that's brilliant. Get the tunes on, have a session, and it's good all around. And you might get some good results, might not. But when it's like when you're kind of like limited to like, I can only go in that day or this day, which is often the case when you work in other jobs as well and things like that. It's kind of like you can catch that spontaneity easier because you've got more time to catch it. But when it's kind of limited, so like for example, I mean one day I came here and I don't think I did any painting or printing. I was just like doing admin really, and I was having a good think. I got my paintings out and I was having a good think about them and pondering things and got the news on and whatever. So to look at that, you'd go, well, you haven't made anything that session, but there's a whole load of other stuff going on in the head, in your brain, thinking about stuff.
That's interesting.
Ideas popping up. Yeah, it's that managing, because you can't really go. This is the kind of difficulty with creativity and deadlines, which you definitely need deadlines to get things done, and they do help. But there's a kind of like with pure creativity, there's a deadline and you're trying to cram it in, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, so you've got to be ahead a little bit really. So, have a kind of a managed way into these things. So potentially, I guess with art, that's probably having some work ready whilst working on some other stuff.
It's saying about deadlines, I mean, we have a mutual friend, Bill Pollard.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to him, after the Advent calendar thing. Oh, we should talk about that because this was your idea and Bill's idea, so we should talk about that a bit. So there was an idea that you two guys had when you came together over doing an outside interactive Advent calendar where you supplied us all with a wine box crate sort of thing and a door, and we had to take it away and do our whatever we wanted, and we all had a dedicated day, and I think mine was the 5th, if I remember rightly. Yours was the 11th, is that right? Yeah. So we could do whatever we wanted. It didn't have to be Christmassy or anything like that. So, and it was such a great thing. And in Northampton, where we are, there's a racecourse park that used to be a racecourse years gone by, and Bill lives opposite, and he just put one up a day, didn't he? So like from the 1st to the 24th, one up every day, and it was such a fantastic thing. But I said to Bill, next time you do something like that, can you tell me a deadline that's 2 weeks before the actual deadline?
Yeah.
Because I should imagine I'm not alone in this, but I was sort of doing it the day before, 2 days before. I was like, right, I've got my idea, I'm going to do it, and then I was doing it till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it sort of struck me that I've realised now that I've got to a certain age that deadlines for me are a bad thing in some ways, because like I leave everything to the last minute, and then you're panicking. So basically my point to Bill was like, can you tell me next year, 2 weeks, say it's 2 weeks before the actual deadline, and then I'll land it in, and then you can say, oh, you've got another 2 weeks if you want to mess around with it. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That I have a similar process, to be honest, because I often think I like to think of the white heat of creation just before the deadline.
Yeah,
moment.
love that.
Some of the some of the best moments of creation take that moment in time to take place. But I often have to do that myself, pretend there's a sub deadline. Yeah. Because if there's no deadline, that's also great, and I can work like that sometimes. But because I absolutely hate deadlines, but even if there's just there's a sort of deadline there, just so you can work towards that. So even if that's the point to work towards, but completely crash through it, at least we've got something to work with. So that kind of having an earlier deadline, it's good. It's again managing that process.
Well, I was saying, I probably said to you at the time, your box was one of my favourite boxes. I loved it.
Oh, cheers, man.
It's got that feel to painting that I really love, where it's a bit drippy, and you had call it like the Harlequin sort of design on it, but it was a bit drippy, diamonds, wasn't it? And sort of like almost like had a sticky looking feel to it. Yeah. And then you had your open it, and you had your eyes,
dangly
eyes, which we'll see sort of are in this exhibition as well. The eyes are
prominent in the cartoon, aren't they? Eyes, are quite prominent. Yeah, they pop up in a lot of places.
Yeah. So with the eyes then, because the eyes are a big part of what you're doing at the moment, aren't they? And are they a big part of what you've been doing for a little while, or?
Well, it all comes back to the cartoon character Bugs Bunny, but like these particular cartoon comedy eyes, I think probably come from that. Yeah. Which is what most of this work is about.
We should probably mention that some of the eyes are actually testicles, aren't they? Yeah. Is that right?
It can be if if that's what you say. Yeah, oculi testi mundi.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that title in itself has multiple meanings. So oculi, oculus, testi to testify, as well as testicle. But so it's the kind of that actual form comes from, there's the eyes from Bugs Bunny. Yeah. So it's all kind of like building up a visual language to kind of use and reinterpret. And so in the prints and the paintings, the eyes in the box all kind of like have a connection. And then there's the serpentine line as well, which is quite not sure on the date, but it's a few centuries ago. There's like a theory of beauty and aesthetics. So going like to the golden ratio and things like that, serpentine line is a certain kind of curve. Right. So it often comes up, so it's a really nice gestural kind of thing to do. And so the charcoal drawings that I was doing quite a bit before these, and in painting as well, that line often appears, and it's just like a really nice thing to do. Yeah. And getting the proportions is like great and kind of thing. But I think I was probably researching serpentine line, right clicking, image search and things like that is like a really good tool for artists. So I mean that's one of the things I do is research. I'll be looking around the internet at imagery. But this particular one came up with a Da Vinci drawing of anatomy and dissection, things like that. And there's one of the testes, and it had that line in. So that is that form. Yeah. So it's become quite relevant, a visual bit of language in my art, I suppose. But attaching that to eye testes, testifying, seeing. So there's a certain amount of like being a male artist and the male gaze and the kind of like looking
Yeah.
You know, with your testes,
Yeah.
perhaps,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Interesting.
You know, if it kind of really affects like the kind of, so the looking, perceiving, and then visual culture and that kind of production of art and other things. Like obviously in advertising, best thing in advertising is sex sales, isn't it? And
I mean, like, I suppose, like, now that we're sort of touching on that subject, we're kind of going through that at the moment, really, aren't we, with the way that women are sort of being perceived and treated. And, there's big changes. I mean, it's like a big change that seems to be happening really slowly. You know, it's a touchy subject to talk about, really, isn't it? From a male point of view, it's like trying to sort of...
I think with a certain amount of honesty, which is perhaps missing in larger discourses of like the mass media and mainstream news and things like that. You know, it's like a really sort of unspoken thing, isn't it? Which has caused and causing lots of problems like we see. And I mean, you see a lot of art that's unaware of, or like maybe not art, but visual culture that's kind of unaware of the base instincts of male gaze, and it's like, you know, you end up with like page 3 and things like that. So I mean, you know, I'm not against looking at things, but
No.
it's just like when it's exploitative or not good. Although I mean, it's very painful moments for people, but the more these things come up, the more they're spoke about, the more progress could be made, really.
Yeah.
It's like the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
You know, people show their bigotry,
Yeah.
and then you know, don't you?
Yeah.
It's like, it's unfortunate that's the way it is, but I'd rather know people that are bigots.
I think it's big moments like this that happen in history. They're slightly exposing of certain people's thoughts, where you may have known people for a long, long time, but then when these big moments occur, all of a sudden certain beliefs get uncovered.
Yeah.
And you can be with somebody that you feel like you've known for a long time, and all of a sudden you realise, actually, I don't know you that well.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing some stuff right now that actually is worrying.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's very subtly done, and it's almost done in a way where they're testing the water and seeing your reaction. I've certainly had to rethink some relationships that I've got with people over certain things. You know, I think it slowly weeds out, you know, the sort of the rotten stuff that's in society. Yeah. But it is a slow process, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So yours relating back to yours and your art, then you've got that kind of the eyes and the gaze, and it's like with eyes, they follow you, don't they? So you can't get away from eyes. So you feel like you're being watched all the time.
Yeah, they're quite. It's a powerful form, isn't it?
Yeah.
The eye represented in culture, you know, the evil eye, all sorts of eyes go back a long time.
Yeah. Before I came here, I was looking at some of the older images that you sent me, and you have one called Gaze. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Is that anything that's connected, do you think, to what you've done here, or
this current stuff? That's from
2016, and you've got Gaze. This is the very way of God. So I mean, you're thinking about eyes there.
Yeah, there's eyes there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I mean that set of work was a lot to do with mostly like woodcut imagery. So like early modern, pre-modern, almost some medieval visual culture. You know, the very starting point of, well, not starting point, but mass visual culture that was accessible to more people. Taking imagery like that and representing it as paintings. But yeah, like that particular image. Yeah, so it's that kind of like all-seeing eye.
Yeah.
I think going back actually, there's a book I've got of like it's woodcuts, and I can't remember the title of the book now, but it's demons and not demonology, but demons, witches, and something else. But it's all woodcuts and kind of like historic visual culture.
Yeah.
And there's a picture in that actually where it's got, I think it's to do with the heavens, and it's got these big curving round things, and they've all got eyes on. And I think that might have been, I really like that image, so I think that and other imagery like that, sort of religious stuff as well. And recently, I'd never even seen this until, I think it was this Christmas, someone shared on Instagram what a biblical angel looks like.
Okay.
I'd never actually seen that before.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, look at that. And I don't know if you've seen it yourself, but it's all like wings and eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, that multiple eye, and combined with the kind of thinking of surveillance and internet and all those kind of things that are going on as well. So, there's a lot of like camera eyes that, we just live with now, like probably a couple of eyes on the screens here, not really thinking about, but there's these eyes everywhere, isn't there?
I mean, that is really true. Yeah, it's sort of, you can't really be out in the world now without being watched, can you?
No, kind of pervasive eyes. So it's quite I should have to have a look. As a theme, I think, it's sort of one that goes through, as well as the comedy of cartoon eyes.
Yeah, so I think you said to me a little while back, there's a whole trickster mentality going on here, sort of like a playful sort of. Is it a menacing trickster, or is it a fun trickster, or is it, what sort of trickster are we looking at here?
Yeah, well, the kind of the trickster archetype, I suppose, that's kind of what I'm interested in. So the visual culture surrounding that, but also so the idea of trickster as mischievous, playful, destructive, all those kinds of things, but in a kind of like social renewal way. Yeah. So in terms of like making art, there's kind of the surrealness and the kind of like weird cartoon physics, I guess, and things like that. There's a kind of trickery, an optical trickery. So that's like what I'm doing, I guess. Yeah. But the language is around the visual culture of the trickster, which in this case, or at the moment, is Bugs Bunny and his comedy self animations. But previous work has involved Puck or Robin Goodfellow as a trickster character. Going back to the 16th century as an image of Puck, and seems to be like the first, or the earliest example. It's anonymous, and obviously Puck comes up in Shakespeare's.
Because that's where I would know it from, not from anything earlier. Yeah,
exactly. Mostly what we know or think of as Puck comes from that. Yeah. But he was a folk character or archetype before that. So, I mean, going back to the start of visual cultural things and reproduced visuals. So, in terms of like, obviously got mass image reproduction now with mass media and communication technologies, but back then it was things like the printing press and pamphlets and the odd book or stained glass windows in churches and things like that. So it's quite interesting that kind of, it's old, so it must be more genuine. Yeah. But it's just interesting, that interpretation, and to think that there's a printmaker artist 400, 500 years ago making that from their imagination, and wherever they got their ideas of that from. It's a real sort of historical, archaeological kind of thing. Yeah.
So with that in mind, you obviously identify with that sort of thing. So what sort of, looking at your art, which I really, really love, what sort of art and artist do you identify with?
Well, in terms of like going back a bit, maybe like influential kind of artist, really, I suppose, is George Grosz, the German kind of like surreal dada, caricatures and sort of social critique artist. Well, obviously pre-Nazification, but on the road to that, he did a lot of like quite, there's a certain amount of grotesque caricatures and a little bit cartoony as well, but like critical kind of commentary about the way things were going, so power structures like the state and
were they easily recognisable within the art, or is that a sort of an interpretation of the art?
No, it's quite blatant when you see them, and they're like 1920s, 30s. You're like, yeah, that could be today. That's still relevant, and that's still like just really good. If I was going to make a painting, I'd like it to look like that sort of thing.
Okay, cool.
That kind of aspiration, I suppose. So that, I mean, kind of that comedy, satirical satire, but you know, quite serious satire.
Yeah.
Doing it in a nice way that's funny, perhaps.
Do you find that's the kind of comedy that you veer towards as well?
Like something I love at the moment, or influential in thinking, is like Stuart Lee's comedy.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant, isn't he? Yeah.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, I love him. Yeah. He can spend like just 15 minutes on just he's saying the same word, and why is that funny?
I don't know. It's so good. Yeah. So like, yeah, if, that's I would come back to him quite a lot.
Yeah.
So you know, if I feel a bit like I can't be fucked at the moment, or a bit down or something, then I'll put Stuart Lee on.
Yeah.
Sounds
But yeah,
good.
I think he's great. I love him. Yeah.
Yeah. Saw him at Downgate. It's right on the cusp of like, you know, people aren't quite getting this and walking out.
Yeah. Oh, were
So,
they? Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of satirical, quite harsh satirical, but really truth telling.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of Trickster, that's what I
Definitely.
really like that. He did a really good, not a lecture, but a kind of like at a university somewhere. He was talking about, I think it was comedy, or was he doing some sort of speech, but might have been literature related. And he was saying how what's changed. So like in the 80s, when you could basically sort of get by and either like be on the dole, or you could rent somewhere and live on a normal wage, and it was doable, and you could do your comedy, and if that, you know, whatever creative pursuits you were doing, you could kind of survive doing that. But now, like, it's completely, you can't.
No.
It's really interesting to see how that's changed in terms of like alternative comedy for him, but like in arts and creative pursuits and theatre and all those things, how it is now. It's like ridiculously difficult.
Actually, a lot of these comics are quite good at art, aren't they? So some fairly good artists out
Crossover.
there.
Yeah. When I was in Bristol, there was one of the final year shows. There was actually a comedy stand-up routine.
Oh, was there?
This girl had done, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really. I was like first year then, but I was like, oh, that's really good.
So she did art. I mean, she was doing art, but her final piece was a stand-up routine.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, was there any sort of connection to visual art within it, or was it just literally she just did stand-up?
I think there was a little bit of sort of documentation. I think.
Yeah.
That kind of end, but yeah, it was more the.
Yeah, brilliant. Has she gone on to be a comedian or not?
I know. Yeah. I don't know, I have to have a look. So I remember what her name
It's brave, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
She'd found her way to it quite
Yeah.
organically, and it was like a surprise to her. But yeah, that kind of.
Yeah, I suppose it's an art form, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't always have to be something that's visual, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
The kind of crossovers of critical engagement with society and satire and comedy. Some of the art theory I look at is, you know, theatre of the absurd and Nietzsche and Birth of Tragedy and things like that. So they're kind of like more theatre related in some ways, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. So should we sort of try and do maybe sort of quick fire ones, like you know? So, what makes you angry?
Everything.
Let's just leave that
No, well, not everything, but unfairness, really, exploitation, inequality, most politics right now.
Yeah. What about the opposite? What gets you happy? What makes you laugh?
Making art, really, and going to the pub.
Yeah. Which you can't do at the moment.
Been a long time. Yeah. No, just like...
Is drinking at home the same? I mean, are you drinking at home or not?
Occasionally, like sometimes I feel like I'll have a drink, but not really. I mean, the kind of the in between bits of lockdown, we was going to the park and having some cans at the park on a summer's day, which was brilliant. But
yeah, I bet that was. I mean, we're going to appreciate all this so much more, aren't we, when we get back to it properly?
Yeah.
What if you weren't doing this? What would you be doing?
What if I wasn't doing art? Don't know really. Probably have a well-paid job, nice career.
Be a CEO of some company.
I like to think that whatever I put my hand to, I'd be good at. I think.
I mean, I'll give you an example.
Really.
I not that I would ever really want to do it, but I actually think I'd be quite good at being a teacher. That's not something I'd ever really want to do, but I think I've got the tools for it.
Yeah. For a while, that was something I thought I could probably do, and especially in terms of art, teaching art, you've got to give it everything.
Yeah,
jobs,
definitely.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's in between because I've got an 8-year-old and an 18-year-old, or 19 she is now. But like those two scales of the spectrum, I think are probably doable. It's what comes in between those where I think probably teaching gets a lot harder nowadays. One thing I was going to ask you mentioned music, and I was interested to know, do you have a certain style of music that you like to listen to? What inspires you musically to do art, or do you just, it's all on what you fancy at the moment?
Yeah, that's one of those questions that like, what's your favourite kind of music sort of thing? Which, I like good music, so like in my opinion. So for me, like a good example of this would be when I'm in my own studio with the painting wall. So that's something I really miss at the moment, having a big wall to paint on and having some music on, and if there's no one else in the studios to annoy with my music, especially, it's good to have it up loud. A good one I go back to a lot is 9 Inch Nails.
Okay.
Live at Lollapalooza Festival, I think it's 2013 or something.
Okay.
It's got a good mixture of like old tunes and new tunes, and it's really good because some 9 Inch Nails is a bit too dark perhaps sometimes. This is like just really good, cracking set. Yeah. So that's something I'll go back to a lot. And then I guess from my era, growing up, there's a lot of grunge and kind of Seattle-based bands. Yeah. Soundgarden and Screaming Trees, like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and those ones, but Hater as well, all that kind of stuff. That's what I grew up with. But then the beauty of being in Northampton, there was a good rave scene here as well. Yeah. So got a good liking of dance music, but particularly drum and bass, and kind of jump up drum and bass and 90s old school. Yeah. So like with drum and bass, there's an interesting kind of like the break beats in that and the quantized beats. It's really good. I guess it's like jazz and other things like that, but to get in that zone, the creative zone, that kind of stuff. And one that's been all the way through is Aphex Twin as well. Okay. I mean, lots of people say Aphex Twin now, but it's like, listening to him since I was a kid, doing the GCSEs and A-level revision with Aphex Twin on. So
I imagine making art and listening to music is a crossover for a lot of people, I should imagine. Like that sort of, what's going to inspire me today? Am I going to listen to something that's a bit more avant-garde or a bit more loud or a bit more brash or something a bit smoother? What am I actually trying to create? So if I put on like if I want to create something that's kind of crazy and just sort of like drips and splashes and all over the place, am I going to put on something that's like just going to make me do that? Or, you know, because you're probably not going to listen to something like really chill when you do that. You probably want something that's going to really make your brain fizz.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand, really.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Well, it's been a really great chat, Alex. One thing I sort of said to you about was this other podcast that I listened to where at the end they do like a one cool thing. I don't know if you managed to think of anything along something that you found inspiring recently. It doesn't matter what it is, just something that you think people might be interested in.
My mate, he's been doing a live stream, drum and bass live stream on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Listen to it, it's quite good. But he got an amazing tune the other day that he played, and it's been one of those tunes I've had to keep putting on.
Yeah.
To keep. Well, I had it on here the other day. What's it called? Oh yeah, Trace and Nico Replicant. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's proper drum and bass. Nice dark bit of energy.
I'll check that out as well. Mine is, I nearly said it earlier because you mentioned Angel Wings, but are you into horror?
Not really.
Yeah. I can take it or leave it, but there's a film that everyone raves about sort of towards the end of last year called St. Maud. And so I put it on the other night. God, it was good. There's some pretty horrific things that happen in it, but it's a British film. I'd say it was fairly low budget. A female director, but I can't remember her name now. And it centres around this woman who is a carer for people who are sort of like at the end of life. Something obviously awful happened when she used to work in hospital. Something awful happened with her there. And she comes out of that and she goes into this caring thing. But in the meantime, she discovers God, but in a very obsessive way. There are some incredible moments in it that sort of incorporate the angel symbolism, and it's done really, really well. And all I can say is, if you watch this film, make sure you stick it right to the very, very last nanosecond, and there's just like this complete last frame. Basically, it's just one frame really, which is like mind blowing.
Yeah,
mind blowing. Yeah. So I loved that. So that was St. Maud. So that's my hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Alex Small, thanks very much. We'll see your work at Hattbox.
Yep.
As of the 13th of April. And at the moment, obviously, if you want to come and see the art, we're going to have to sort of maybe do a booking. We could do that Sundays, maybe Mondays. But if you're a client at Hattbox, because it is a hairdresser's as well, you'll be able to kind of come and look, get your hair done and see the art, and tell us what you think. Thanks, Alex.
That's all right. Thanks for being asking me.